The other important category of Zen Buddhist painting is Doshakuga, which refers to Buddhist themes of spiritual revelation. The paintings are figural, usually depicting Zen masters or bodhisattvas such as Kannon. This Doshakuga was painted by Kaoninga, who worked in the mid-14th century. The painting was done sometime before 1345. Very little is known of this painter, who used the Kao and Ninga seals on his works, but he's thought to have been a Buddhist monk associated with the Takuma school, which was founded in Kyoto in the late 10th century by Takuma Tameuji and his sons. They practiced the Yamata-e style of painting. In the 14th century, many of the members of the Takuma school were copying Song dynasty literati painting. This image represents Kanzan, an eccentric monk who lived in a cave near the Buddhist monastery on Mount Tiantai, the center of Tendai worship in China. Kanzan was a poet, and Kao depicts him smiling as he draws his inspiration from nature. The image is done in a combination of bold dark lines and ephemeral-looking gray washes. Another early 14th century painter of Doshakuga was Mokuan Reien, a priest who was ordained at Kamakura in 1323 and who traveled to China in 1327 to study Zen. He lived in China until his death in 1345, but many of his paintings were later brought to Japan. This image by Mokuan, known as the Four Sleepers, depicts Kanzan and his friend Jitoku sleeping in a group with the monk Bukan and his tiger. At the top of the scroll is an inscription by a Chinese monk that, closely translated, reads, "Bukan embraces his tiger and sleeps, all huddled together with Jitoku and Kanzan. They dream their big dream, which lingers on, while a frail old tree clings to the bottom of the cold precipice. Shaomu of the Shangfu Temple salutes with folded hands." As in Kao's painting of Kanzan, Mokuan's image is painted with an economy of lines, some dark and some light. The cliff is rendered in a light wash. This Doshakuga was painted in the early 15th century by the Zen monk Kichizan Mincho. Born on the island of Awaji, he became the student of the local Zen master and followed him to Tofukuji in Kyoto, where he received an appointment. Mincho served as Chodensu, or administrator of the buildings and supplies in the temple compound. Part of his responsibilities included making images for the temple. Mincho was a prolific artist and worked on different themes. This image, the central scroll from a set of 3, represents Bodhidharma, the founder of Zen, seated in a cave. When Zen Buddhism was introduced to Japan, a number of formerly important deities and symbols disappeared from Japanese Buddhist art. One that was retained, however, was the Byajue, or white-robed Kannon. In this form, Kannon is generally depicted as seated on a rock near Mount Potalaka at the southern tip of India. The white-robed Kannon apparently developed as a blending of several traditions of depicting Kannon. The large halo comes from the water moon Kannon. The branch of weeping willow by his hand comes from the weeping willow Kannon, and the color white is associated with the purity of Kannon's dwelling place. The depiction of the white-robed Kannon became popular in China as early as the 10th century. In this image, the seated white-robed Kannon has a willow branch and a vase by his right elbow. A waterfall can be seen through the large halo. At the top of the image are tree branches that form a curve that echoes the halo. At Kannon's feet are waves. The painting isn't signed, but there's an inscription that attributes to the late 13th century Chinese painter Yue Hu. It was probably actually made at Tofukuji by a Buddhist painter. Throughout the medieval period, the shoguns had been supportive of the arts, especially those associated with Zen. In the Muromachi period, the estates of 2 retired Ashikaga shoguns became cultural centers. Yoshimitsu's villa in the Kitayama, or North Hills area of Kyoto, was planned as a place of beauty for the leisurely pursuit of the arts. In a later period, the villa was converted to a temple and is today known as Kinkakuji, or the Temple of the Golden Pavilion. The Kinkakuji, built in 1399, is a three-storied Chinese-style pavilion with all of the exterior portions, except for the roof, covered in gold leaf. The building was constructed next to an artificial pond which reflects the golden light and doubles its dramatic effect. Although the original building was destroyed by an arsonist in 1950, the structure was rebuilt less than 15 years later. The 3 floors of the Kinkakuji were designed for different purposes. The ground floor was conducive to quiet contemplation of the garden, which could be viewed when the latticed panels were raised. The second floor was designed as a location primarily for viewing the moon and its reflection in the artificial pond. The third floor held sculptures of the Amida Buddha and 25 bodhisattvas. It also contained a Buddha relic that had been brought from Engakuji in Kamakura. A second major villa to be designed for a retired Ashikaga shogun was Jishoji in the Higashiyama, Eastern Hills area of Kyoto. The villa of Yoshimasa, Yoshimitsu's grandson, is today known as Ginkakuji, the Temple of the Silver Pavilion. The nickname's a misnomer since the exterior was never intended to be covered in silver. Some believe, however, that Yoshimasa planned to put silver on the interior walls of a second-floor chamber devoted to Kannon. As in the Kinkakuji, the first floor of the Ginkakuji was designed to be used for meditation and was fitted with sliding doors to permit a view of the lake and gardens. The view of the building itself from various locations along the garden path was also taken into consideration when laying out the plan for the estate. The retreats of Yoshimitsu and Yoshimasa were not created purely for private enjoyment. Both men established themselves as patrons of the arts and used their villas as sites for advancing cultural pursuits. Yoshimitsu had an interest in the No drama and Renga poetry, while Yoshimasa supported the tea ceremony and ikebana, or flower arranging. In part, this was a political strategy, since Yoshimitsu was interested in usurping the cultural power of the imperial court, which had already lost a lot of its other powers. Yoshimitsu established his cultural influence largely through the Tonseishi, men who were born into lower ranks of society but who took monastic vows to escape the class system. The Tonseishi did not affiliate themselves with Buddhist temples, but used their status as monks to pursue cultural activities supported by the Ashikaga shogunate. In 1467, the retirement of Yoshimasa led to the conflict between competing factions that is known as the Onin War, which lasted until 1477. The fighting took place largely in Kyoto and witnessed the destruction of the imperial palace and the northern half of the city. The sense of unity among Kyoto's inhabitants that resulted from these troubles influenced the development of a new subject for painting, Rakucho Rakugai, or scenes in and around the capital. Raku was one of the popular names for Kyoto. In Rakuchu Rakugai, the capital city is shown from a bird's-eye perspective, and usually is painted over 6-panel folding screens, or byobu. This example comes from the 17th century, but invention of the new genre is attributed to Tosa Mitsunobu, who lived from 1434 to 1525. He was the most prominent painter in the imperial court during the Onin War. Tosa Mitsunobu was part of the Tosa school of painting, which was founded in the 12th century by Fujiwara no Tsunetaka, who became known as Tosa Tsunetaka. Although the painters of the Tosa school were not all descendants of Tosa Tsunetaka, they generally took the surname Tosa. For 700 years, the Tosa school perpetuated the Heian period Yamato-e style of painting. In the late 15th century, the violence in Kyoto caused the Tonseishi to leave, and in their absence, the Sanami family became artistic advisors to the Ashikaga shoguns. Members of the family attach the suffix Ami to their names to indicate their affiliation with Amidism, although they were not really active as Buddhist monks. The Son Ami were painters in a style based on southern Song dynasty painting. Together they formed the Ami school of painting. Of the Ami school, the greatest artist was probably Soami, the last of 3 generations of advisors to the shogun. This is one of Soami's typical paintings, a 6-panel folding screen with a landscape of 2 of the 4 seasons. Soami's landscape is based on a view of southern China in one of the hand scrolls owned by the Ashikaga shoguns. The 8 Views of Xiao and Xiang by Mu Qi, a Chinese monk of the 13th century. Within Soami's landscape are tiny genre scenes associated with the seasons. On the right, a person is crossing a bridge partly hidden in the mists of springtime. At the center, fishermen are seen below a waterfall in the summertime. The other screen with which this one forms a pair has scenes related to fall and winter. Soami's style involves washes of gray ink and darker dots. Overall, his paintings are serene and would have contributed to the creation of a contemplative atmosphere in temples and pavilions of the Muromachi period. Another major school of painters contemporary with the Ami school is known as the Kano school. The Kano school was the most influential of any tradition in the history of Japanese painting, lasting for more than 300 years. It was founded by the painter Kano Masanobu, who was appointed official painter to the Ashikaga shogunate in 1481. It was, however, his son, Kano Motonobu, who was the most prominent of the Kano school painters in the Muromachi period. Motonobu worked in a number of styles and themes, including Yamato-e narratives, loosely rendered landscapes, and a bird and flower painting in the Chinese tradition. This work is an example of the latter, one of 8 hanging scrolls depicting birds and flowers of the 4 seasons. The scrolls were originally sliding door panels in the Hojo Hall of Daisen-in Temple, a Zen sub-temple at Daitokuji in Kyoto. It's long been assumed that the paintings were done in 1513, the year when the Daisen-in Temple was founded, but an alternate theory proposes that they were done 20 years later, in 1535, when major renovations were done in the Hojo Hall. One of the most important traditions to emerge in the medieval period was the tea ceremony. Tea seeds had been brought to Japan in the Kamakura period by the scholar-priest Eisai, whom we've already discussed. He had studied Rinzai Zen in China. Eisai wrote a text, Kisa Yojoki, describing the physical and spiritual benefits of tea drinking, and he helped to popularize the practice. Eisai's tea seeds were planted in the mountains west of Kyoto, and later tea cultivation spread to the central provinces of Kyushu. The drinking of powdered green tea was adopted primarily by monks in Zen temples. The method of preparing the tea was borrowed from Song dynasty China. The original gestures for preparing the tea are unknown, but it's believed that the basic utensils were a kettle and brazier, a bamboo whisk, and a tea bowl on a lacquered stand. This Muromachi period cast iron kettle was made in the 15th century. It's shaped like a hoju, or wish-fulfilling jewel. The majority of the surface on this kettle has a regular texture of hailstone pattern. Within the medallion, which is shaped like a military leader's fan, is a bull. The subject comes from the 10 bulls that appear frequently in Zen painting as an expression of the path to enlightenment. The knob of the lid is shaped like a plum flower. The kettle was made in the Ashiya area near the mouth of the Onga River in Fukuoka Prefecture. Kettles made at the Ashiya forges, or Ashiyagama, were made specifically for tea ceremony use, from the late Kamakura period to the early Edo period.